We now have our application set up. We are past the TypeScript compiling, we're past getting the dependencies, and we're past System.js loading our application. Now we get to finally work in the Angular 2 world and see how cool Angular 2 is compared to Angular 1. For starters, we're in the index.html file. This is where we load all of the dependencies, where we start up our application, and you can see that everything is loaded inside of my app. Now my app is going to refer to our app component, and this is where all of the logic in our application is going to start. We don't need this index.html anymore, since we're going to put everything inside of my app component. Now in app component, I've added a header here, and this is going to have the header and the footer for our application. The reason we would want to put this in the app component and not the index.html file is because the app component is Angular, and Angular can help us do things like authentication, and we can show if a user is logged in or logged out. We can do all sorts of different stuff as long as this app component is encompassing our entire application. In our case, it is. So let's get to work. We'll put in a header, and we'll give it some bootstrap styling. We'll give it a navbar inverse. We'll do a navbar header. And the logo. Close the header out. And then we'll create the footer really quickly. Let's make sure that took to our application. All right, looks like everything is working here. Let's center the text on the footer. All right. Now we have the overall template for our application. Let's start moving things around. Let's split this over to the right, and we'll split the Sublime text to the left. I'll hide the sidebar for now and work here. Okay, so when we're working with Angular 1, it was really cool how we could get data from our controller out to our view. How would we do the same in Angular 2? Well, since we have this component here, and we already have a template and a class already built for this specific component, we can just create data inside of this class. We'll do message is equal to hello. And just like in Angular 1, we can show it using our double brackets and just pass in message here. Because this class is directly tied to this component template, we don't have to actually do anything like controller.message or anything like that. It simplifies our code a little bit as compared to Angular 1. Let's start doing some more stuff. We'll put a users list, just like our demo. Let's start with one user. We'll do user is equal to an object. We'll give it an ID of some random number, a name, and a username. All right, now let's show that in our application. Let's give the main section a main. Let's do a p tag in there. The user is user.name. And we'll pass in the user.username as well. All right, so you can see really quickly that our class is combined with our template to start building out our application. How about showing a list of users? Let's start out with a list of users, and we'll give this an array of objects here. And we'll condense this down to one line just to make it simpler to read. I'll throw Nick in here. What's his Twitter handle? All right, there's that. And then we'll do one more. We'll throw Holly in here as well. Now we have our users list. Let's take a look see if there are any errors. Go into the console. And now Angular 2, since it's better at showing errors than Angular 1, we can see that there's a problem in our template on line 15. Starting in our template, starting at this line, line 15, we're looking at user.name. And instead, we have this users array, and user.name no longer exists, and that's where our error throws. Cannot read property name of undefined. So Angular 2 is really good at giving us better errors and the entire trace of where our application is throwing errors at. Let's loop through the users array that we just created. In Angular 1, we had to do ng repeat. In Angular 2, we'll find that there's a couple different ways that the template syntax is going to differ from Angular 1. For instance, to do an ng repeat, we're going to do star ng for and let user of users. And then we'll loop over these and we'll do user.name and user.username. We can see that we loop over the 3 users in that array. And you might think this is a little crazy, right? We have ng4, let user of users. Now, if you haven't really dealt with ES6, you'll know that this is a little bit of a weird syntax for you. One of the coolest things that I like coming out of ES6 is the for of loop. Instead of doing for eaches and stuff like that, we can just do for user of users. So Angular is going to take that syntax and do ng4, let user of users. So this really mirrors the ES6 way of doing a for loop. Now, what is this star here? That is a little different than what you might be used to. The star lets us know right at first glance that this is going to be a template-driven part of our application. Angular 2 will look for the stars, it will evaluate what's in this expression, and then it will render our templates. We also have access to ngIf. Let's do div star ngIf, and if we have users, this will show, and if we don't, then that entire section won't show. We've dealt a little bit with how Angular 2 shows information using the double brackets and interpolation. We've dealt with these structural directives, and ngIf and ng4 are both structural directives. We've also dealt with passing data from our class over to our template. Next up, we're going to build out a little bit more of this website, and we'll clean up a couple things here and there, and then we'll also play around with some TypeScript features as well.